Welcome to Roundhouse Roulette, a Walker, Texas Ranger podcast. Each week we'll recap and review one of the 200 existing Walker, Texas Ranger episodes randomly selected by Roundhouse Roulette. I'm Evan Dalton, here with my brother Adam.
What up, what up?
And a man whose life story has been written in graffiti on the wall of his local package store, Mr. Bob Leahy.
Hey, how are you?
You know, hanging in there, as they say. Well, we'd like to thank you all for joining us as we revisit Chuck Norris's informative take on substitute teaching. Today, we're going to recap and review Season 6, Episode 24, Test of Faith, where Walker infiltrates a local middle school fraught with gang violence. But before we put on our tweed coats and sharpen our pencils, join us as we pull up a stool at CD's Bar and Grill.
Closed? What? What is going on here? Out of beer back next week. CD. What's up with that?
You guys want to go drink in the parking lot?
Absolutely.
We're here.
I say we dumpster dive for some beers and see what we come up with.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, these look a little warm, but I think we can make these work. Hey, catch.
Oh. Mine's a bit dented and smells of raccoon pee.
All right. What do you got, Bob?
I found a Smutty Nose Finest Kind IPA.
Wow. I mean, maybe CD just was not into all these hipster beers and he just threw them
He's
in
just
the dumpster.
throwing them in the trash. Yeah, exactly.
I think so.
It's all right. It's fine by me.
Yeah, I've got a Wingman Down Imperial India Pale Ale from Black Abbey. So, yeah, he probably wasn't down with that. His eyes are ablaze. He flies on the wings of dreams as high as the sun. And then it has a guy with flaming wings on the front. So you got a little too close to the sun. So
I get it. It's a play on Icarus.
Yeah.
Mine, I can only assume CD must have thought it was some sort of fruit juice and he got rid of it. This is a Down East white cider. So it's a play on like a Belgian style beer, but with a cider instead.
Word, but let's crack these mamalakas.
Dumpster beer.
Yeah, even warm, it's still good. So
It's almost
really
like we
is.
chose them ourselves.
it is, but they were we chose them from the dumpster. CD, we'll take your
Trash pickings.
we'll take your dumpster beers any day of the week, CD. That's what we're trying to say, all right? Well, this week, a friend of the podcast, superfan Kevin, messaged us and said, guys, new podcast segment, just saying. And he sent us a link to this website. Have you seen this, Bob?
I have not.
It's Walker, Texas Ranger fan fiction, okay?
Oh, boy.
And apparently he stumbled across it this week, and it looks like it's copywritten 2014, and the website kind of looks older than 2014, if you ask me.
Yeah, it looks like it was created with GeoCities.
But once you click on the WTR stories and realize the vast catalog, they're currently on 671 different stories that fans wrote. New adventures for Walker and Company.
I don't think they have an editor. I just clicked on the last one because it's called Oh Baby.
Yeah.
And this is like 3 paragraphs long.
Apparently, they're still accepting stories. If you've written your own story, you can email it to WTRfanfiction@gmail.com. It looks like that Oh Baby one is copywritten as of 2020. So last year, someone submitted that one.
There's one entitled Slippery When Wet.
Oh, man.
Another called Daddy's Girl.
Walker versus the Brady Bunch.
Oh, man, all right. There are currently 671 of these.
Yeah, that is unreal.
Oh, my God. Wow. Well, I think a goal for the podcast is to have some fanfic of ours posted up here.
Yeah, I think we got to get on that.
Some of these people put their email address in here.
Yeah.
I just clicked on one called A Walker Christmas Story 1870s Style. And right on the front, when you click on it, it's like, here's the guy's AOL.com email address. Like, I'm going to write this guy some notes.
You might want to clean up that intro.
But man, some of these, a lot of these are really long. People spend a lot of time
This
on
one
this.
is fantastic. So this is some fanfic based around one of the episodes we covered called Blown Apart. And it comes with a little bit of text at the beginning saying, the question has always been, did they or didn't they? And if they did, when? This is when I think it happened. And then another side note, song included is I Can't Fight This Feeling by REO Speedwagon.
Nice.
And most importantly, warning, some of the content comes closer to an R rating than a PG-13, but this is their first time, smiley face. Here we go. He held her tightly as he remembered the terror of the past hour, starting with the phone call from Max Cale, informing him that Alex was the next person scheduled to die. He didn't even remember the drive to her apartment, but the scene before him when he entered her door was one he knew he would never forget. His beautiful Alex, tied to a chair, her mouth covered with tape, and a bomb hanging around her neck. And, goes on from there. Oh, man, they have the lyrics to I Can't Fight This Feeling in the middle of the whole thing.
They're like, the one good thing about fan fiction is you don't have to pay for song royalties. So Kevin sent us a segment of one of these fanfics. For listeners out there, if you've got children in the car, this might be a good sex ed for them. So Bob, if you can read that highlighted section, I'm just going to set up some music for you.
Okay. Turn over, Walker, she instructed him, and beginning with his feet, she began a journey back up his body. She bypassed his genitals as she concentrated on his legs and hips. Her eyes enjoyed the view as she stretched up and over him to reach his stomach. She used circular motions up to his chest. Stretching her arms up, she leaned forward and her breasts brushed against his arousal. What is this?
Wow. This story, Evan, is entitled Dreams in Washo's Big Bed. And it was written by Dakota, and she has her email there if people want to reach out to her for comments. But Evan, I'm just going to roll the music and let you take this one away.
Rolling over, Walker felt a familiar presence in the room. Opening his eyes slowly, a soft gasp of unexpected pleasure escaped his lips as the vision before him instantaneously took his breath away. She was standing by the window, wearing a sheer white negligee. The moonlight illuminated the enticing and provocative curves of her slender body. The soft, gentle breeze from the open window made the golden tresses of her hair dance seductively against her cheeks and bare shoulders. With a smile of an angel sent from above, her body beckoning to his as she gracefully began to move slowly towards him.
If you skip down a couple of paragraphs, this gets real raunchy. Real quick.
For listeners out there, we kind of danced around the more salacious lines, but for anybody who kind of was let down by not having a lot of sexual action between Alex and Walker on the show, just hit up WTRfanfiction.com and...
You're not alone. You got plenty of company.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Man. So, I mean, that was all kinds of strange.
Yeah.
But, just super happy that people...
love the show that much.
Yeah.
Literally love the show that much.
Mm-hmm.
All night long.
Okay, moving on. Jeez. Well, we got a lot to cover this week, so let's get on into it. If you're watching along at home and don't want any spoilers, hit pause and watch Season 6, Episode 24, Test of Faith, and come on back to us. Welcome back. Let's dig into this one. This episode originally aired on May 9th, 1998, and it opens with something we're used to seeing at this point in time, a fairly bizarre montage.
The story of my life was written in graffiti on the walls of the barrio, colorful and seedy. A dude was down, so I cut and kicked him. He would have killed me first, so who's the victim?
That was beautiful.
Orderly! My eyes are shooting daggers. My hood is on fire, marked with all the taggers. I'm in a cell, sitting in silence. You better step up, or else more violence.
Wow. Yeah. So imagine that with really bad, like, accompaniment behind it. And grainy, intentionally grainy,
low-riding, cruising on the boulevard. The law is crime, and surviving is so hard.
So yeah, intentionally grainy, faded footage of like fake drug deals / presumed gang members hanging out, lowriders riding around,
pixelated text about gang violence on the screen, just like scrolling like a
it's in courier font, so it's meant to look like it's a newspaper.
Yeah. Yep. And it's like drive by, gangbangers, stuff like that, just scrolling across the screen.
They're mainly just hanging out, and I'm like, they're really painting this in a bad light. These guys are having a good time.
Yeah.
Just hanging out, like they're not killing anybody.
They're kind of like the Diamantes. The Diamantes just want to have a good time.
The Diamantes were in the Covenant, right?
Was that the Covenant?
I think they were in the Covenant.
Yeah,
I can
sure.
almost guarantee you that this song, The Story of My Life, is written in graffiti. It's definitely in the Covenant. We've heard this at least once before, if not twice.
But they didn't let it play as long as they do in this episode, and they reused this track multiple times throughout this episode. It's like the only song that the gangbangers are listening to.
Oh, there's another song. We'll get to that, though.
So good.
But this song, too, they actually name drop the Vatos Locos in the second verse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I heard that.
They do. So this is a custom cut. We're unable to find this song anywhere else, and probably for good measure.
So that's a great way to kick off the episode, right?
Absolutely. What could be even more ridiculous? A zoom cut to a knife fight in a school cafeteria?
Yes, like two really young kids, right? Maybe middle school, but they almost look like they could be in elementary school. Like the kids in this episode are really young, right?
Mm-hmm.
They call it out as a middle school.
Yeah, it's a showdown over which gang is in control of the school. And one of them is with the Diablos, and another one, I believe, is with the Vatos Locos. So this is a gang we've encountered before in Walker. And it comes to blows. One kid punches another kid. And while this is happening, there's some nerds sitting at the cafeteria table.
The nerd table?
Yeah, they're sitting at the nerd table.
Right.
And
I think we're all pretty familiar with that table.
For sure. And the one white girl's like, these gangs are a real problem. We need to do something about this.
Okay, Karen.
Right. Oh, but her name is not Karen. We learn her name later. But anyways, it comes to blows, and one kid pulls a knife, and the cool teacher steps in, grabs a knife from the kid's hand, and sends them to the principal's office. The other teachers clearly were like, oh God, there's a knife fight. Like, I don't get paid enough to deal with this. So they clearly hid behind something. And when the one teacher took the knife, then they felt they could come over. And they were like, we got to do something about these gangs. Someone has to save our school. But who could do it? Boom, hard cut, car chase. Boom, Walker's truck.
Just peel around the corner too, right? It's so good.
So ripping.
Yeah, we see Walker's truck bust around a corner, and that question has been answered. The one person who can save the school is Walker. Foreshadowing, be damned. And what ensues here is probably like a quintessential Walker chase. This is what people watch Walker Texas Ranger for.
This is what we've been missing the past few weeks.
Yes, it felt so good to watch this. So good. Could someone explain what happens?
Pretty standard chase until at one point they pull around a corner and drive through like a gas station. The truck that's going first decides to shoot the gas pumps as they're driving by. and Walker's coming through the other side of that gas pump, and it just explodes. Of course, Dodge Ram just drives right through it. No problem. But it is a pretty intense explosion.
And these robbers, too, apparently, like, robbed a bank, and they show, like, a shot of them coming out of the bank and shooting a guard, and then taking an extra, like, maybe 6 seconds just to fire their automatic weapons into the bank, maybe just to take out anybody that might be coming out, I guess.
I think they're just like breaking glass, so they just shot a lot of glass. It was a really
long time. It was like, you guys should be running right now.
And like that explosion, that was clearly a real explosion with a stunt driver literally driving through an exploding gas station in a Dodge Ram. I mean, that was pretty awesome.
It was awesome. Great. It was really sick.
So, after the gas station blows up, this guy's on a cell phone. He's like, we got a couple Texas Rangers on our tails. Get the chopper ready. And it's like, rub your hands together. Get some popcorn. This is going to be awesome.
So the bad guy's car gets to some random building, and you see the helicopter off in the distance, and you're like, oh, they're going to land the helicopter on top of the building, and the guys are going to, run up the building and meet the helicopter on top.
They run into the building, and Walker and Trevette are like immediately behind them, and they just run into the building as well. And it seems like they have like a Ghostbusters moment where they have to walk up the entire flight of stairs.
There's no elevator.
Yeah, and so they're just like pounding up these stairs. And the bank robbers are not spring chickens, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking at this point, like, there's no way Walker and Trevette, particularly Trevette, who's an ex-wide receiver, can't catch up with these guys at some point. But they must have gotten a really good head start. So, they get to the roof, and there's some fire exchange back and forth, and Walker and Trevette take out 2 of the guys. But another guy's able to get onto the helicopter right at the edge of the building. And, the chopper's taken off, and Walker does his second helicopter cling. We've seen this before.
Helicopter cling.
Just like we've heard the story of my life is written in graffiti, we've seen Walker jump and cling onto a helicopter before.
So he literally, at the last second, jumps and grabs the leg. Like, what would you call that on a helicopter?
They're like skis, right?
Right.
We're experts.
The
in
landing
topic.
skis.
The
legs.
The legs of the helicopter.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So, anatomy of a helicopter. Let's check this out. We need to know this. Okay.
Do we, though?
Landing gear.
Okay.
Landing gear comes in different forms, but skids and
wheels. No, in the episode, they call it a skid. They really do.
When did they say that? I don't remember hearing them say that.
I like that a lot better.
Trevette's like, what were you doing grabbing the skid or something like that? There was a word he used, but
that makes us sound like we know what we're talking about.
Apparently, the helicopter legs are called skids, and that's something I'm never going to forget now. So Walker, at the top of the building, jumps off with no safety net and grabs the skids of the ascending helicopter, which has the bad guy in it, and hangs on. And I'm like, what? Like, seriously? I'm like, what's his game plan? Because then the helicopter starts ascending really high, right?
It just takes off. And there's clearly just like a dude hanging from the landing gear of this helicopter as it flies over the city.
There's like a shot of him in the skyline, and I'm like, oh, that looks like a toy helicopter with an action figure hanging off the bottom legs of it, right?
But it's a real helicopter with a real dude hanging from it.
Yeah, and then it showed a close-up, and the dude was moving. I'm like, they actually did this.
Yeah. So if you look really closely in one of the scenes a little bit later, you can actually see that there is an inconspicuous rope or something attached to the person. But even so, like, that's insane to be just like cruising in a helicopter with a dude hanging from it like that.
So then what happens next is Walker climbs up and pulls a gun on the pilot. He's still outside standing on the skids, and he says, take it down. And they take it down back on the same building that they took off from.
Yeah.
So that's when Trevette's like, you're giving Superman a run for his money up there.
Now he's like, Superman called. He wants his cape back. Which, honestly, that's what we're watching Walker for, is to see him be Superman.
That
Actually,
was amazing.
Best Superman.
And that's what that's the kind of Walker I'm looking for. And that was right off the bat. And we might add that this storyline or opening teaser has nothing to do with the rest of the episode.
Right. It was just like a reminder of how awesome Walker is.
Definitely. It was reminiscent of the opening of the Chairman Saga when Walker and Trevette swing through a window from a helicopter.
This is definitely one of the best openers we've seen so far.
If we cut out the first 3 minutes where there's a strange montage and kids getting in a knife fight at school.
I've already forgotten about that.
Exactly. Like it served its purpose there. But in case you had forgotten, we cut back to a nighttime scene on a suburban street and a couple of kids, which we recognize as two of the middle school gang members from the Vatos Locos, I believe. And they're walking down the street and they realize that the Diablos are coming up the street. And so they turn around and try to run away, but they're cut off by two adult Diablos who corral them and hold them in place while the leader of the Diablos, who's confusingly called Loco, steps out and establishes himself as a real piece of garbage by shooting two kids dead.
Yeah, and pretty much any glee I had from Walker doing anything crazy and awesome was just forgotten about when I had to witness two kids getting shot.
Yeah, it's like this episode, not afraid to tackle a hard topic and show us kids getting shot, I guess. Like, seems unnecessary, but go for it.
They did have to show that Loco was Loco. I guess that's what that scene facilitated. This guy's a bad guy.
That he is. So Walker and Trevette hear about this, and they actually realize that the school itself is in the middle of the territory of 5 different gangs. And so this school really is in like the middle of a turf war going on. Hard cut to Thunder Karate Studios. And who do we see within but our good friend Trent?
And Trent is one of the Sons of Thunder that they spun off into their own series and kind of introduced their characters in this season. So he runs a karate dojo and he was trained by Walker. And hence opened up his own karate dojo. And we kind of hear this regurgitated because he's sparring with one of the teachers we saw in the opening scene who broke up the knife fight. Actually, the guy who took the knife out of the guy's hand, which is something you would definitely learn in Walker's karate class.
De-escalating things.
Exactly. So he's sparring with Trent, and Trent knocks him on the ground, and he's like, "Where'd you learn that?" And of course, we're all like, waiting for it, wait for it, wait for it. Trent's like, Walker taught me. Yeah. Of course he did.
So, of course, Mr. Lopez, the teacher from the school, is talking about the problems of all the violence at his school. And Trent's like, well, have you talked to Walker about it? And he's like, maybe I should. Cut to Walker and Mr. Lopez going for a jog in the park.
Oh my gosh.
Walker's wearing a zip-up sweatshirt, half zipped up with no shirt underneath it, which great workout wear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Inspirational.
Yeah, it's an inspirational jog for sure. And he's all like, well, you're just changing kids' lives. And, you got to be a positive role model. And you're making a difference. And Mr. Lopez is like, I guess I am. And then it kind of awkwardly ends.
And it's funny because he mentions that he was a troubled youth and Walker saved him. And then also at the end of the scene, they're kind of resting and they're like, oh, are they done with their run? And then Walker's like, all right, we got 5 more miles to go. And Mr. Lopez is like, are you serious? 5 miles? What the hell? And you're like, what? What kind of run is this? Walker's just like, he's Superman.
We just got to run around the park 40 more times.
He's like, I got to listen to this for 5 more miles.
So then we get to see Mr. Lopez at work in school. And he's in his economics class, doing some social economics, and he's showing them how much money a high school dropout makes in their lifetime, and he compares that to someone who has a high school diploma, saying that in their lifetime that person makes $300,000 more than someone else. And this one kid's like, wait, are you saying that a high school diploma's worth $300,000? That's like us getting 2 Lamborghinis when we graduate. And everyone's like, wow, he's so cool. That's like so funny. He's such a class ham, that guy. And in the back of the classroom, we see Carlos, who is a young recruit of the Diablos. And Carlos is not enjoying the hijinks of his classmates. Instead, he's having odd flashbacks to what appear to be an abusive father beating his mother. We're not exactly sure, and thankfully we don't actually see any footage of that, which we know the show is not above showing those types of things.
Yeah.
God, it was terrible.
It looks like they were trying to show it, but then they're like, let's kind of make it all hazy so they don't really see what's going on.
But regardless, he's not paying any attention to Mr. Lopez, and he should be listening to Mr. Lopez because his lesson is all about choices and teaching them about the choices they make and how they influence their lives moving forward. And just as he's about to finish up his little lesson there, Loco and his crew walk directly into the classroom. And they're like, all right, Carlos, you got to come with us. And Mr. Lopez is like, excuse me, class is in session. You boys best be leaving. And they're all like, look, Teach, we got to get our guy, and you don't have any authority over us. And then Mr. Lopez breaks down into what we can only interpret as street talk. And he says, look, G, you best step off.
Ooh.
And they get into a little scuffle, and Mr. Lopez does a little karate action, including a pretty well-placed nut kick. I don't know if you guys
Yeah,
caught
good.
that.
Yeah.
It's like,
I did love how earlier in the episode, you saw the kids filing into school and they're all going through metal detectors. Like, this school is pretty high security, but there are these three like dudes that are in their like late 20s or 30s that just randomly found their way in. It's like,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
all
How
right.
did they get in? We don't know. Well, we can only assume they left their guns in the car. So they're like, well, you don't have any metal on you, so we'll let you in.
Yeah.
Maybe they climbed in through a window. I like to think that.
Yeah.
Anywho, so they're like, hey, man, this ain't over. And they leave. And Mr. Lopez's class is pretty thrilled. They give him a little round of applause.
Yeah, and he kind of revels in it for a second, and then he looks to the back of the class.
Carlos is gone. He lost Carlos. So after class, one of his students, Malcolm, comes up and he's like, hey, Teach, that was really awesome. I want to learn how to fight like you to defend myself.
Of course.
Right.
And he's all like, I have a friend who taught me. I'll give you his name. And then we see the outside of the school and...
So the life of a child.
What the hell was that?
oh, my.
Was that your own rendition?
This is where it was played for the first time after the student asked him to learn karate, and he's like, oh, I'll teach you how to defend yourself and stand up for what's right. And Mr. Lopez is walking out of the school, and this is the first time we hear... How would you describe this song, guys?
Amazing.
Yeah, it's like a female Texas ballad singer in full, like, 90s fashion, belting out a ballad with minimal but syrupy accompaniment.
Yeah, and, I was a little late getting to the podcast here today because I recorded my own version. Here we go. So the life of a child, and you will live forever in that child's life. So the life of a child, and the world will be much better. The life you save will someday shine so bright. Shine so bright. Save the life of a child.
Yep.
Bravo.
Save the life of a child and you will live forever. That's the take-home message here.
I don't get how they connect those dots, but we're going to roll with it.
Yep. So, we're like, wow, that's great. That's really strange. What the heck just happened? And basically, Mr. Lopez gets accosted outside the school, which is entirely predictable. And just when he thinks he's off the hook, he ends up getting gunned down by Loco.
Yeah, I thought they were just going to let him go. They're like, just threaten him. And then at the last minute, they're just like, yeah, you know what? We're going to gun him down.
Well, you should have learned, Bob. He did the same thing with the two kids at the beginning. That's kind of Loco's move.
Yeah.
That's his MO.
He's a punk move because he doesn't even do it to their face. He's like, yeah, I'll send them on their way and then shoot them in the back.
That is definitely Loco's MO. Anyways, so after that happens, Malcolm, his student who was asking about doing karate just moments earlier, actually witnesses the murder and runs away. But Loco doesn't really care about that. The student Malcolm is really shook up, and we sort of get this odd side story where he's like really paranoid about everything, and he ends up buying a gun from some random 40-something-year-old guy in the back of like his Cadillac.
Yeah, the trunk.
Right.
So we're like, what the heck is that all about? Okay, whatever.
I guess he was like going to do the right thing and do the karate class, but then he saw the guy that was literally going to. And then he was like, oh, well, I guess I'm not going to be saved now, so I might as well get this gun to protect myself.
Yeah, pretty much. Meanwhile, that night at CD's bar, Walker and Trevette and CD and Alex and even Trent are sitting around there at the bar. They're debating over how easy it is or how difficult it is at this point to be a child. And, you know, obviously CD thinks it's much easier now to be a kid, but everyone else thinks it's absolutely impossible to be a teenager. But someone's keen eye sees the TV, and they ask CD to turn up the volume there on the clicker. And, news coverage. Mr. Lopez shot down, and Trent can't believe it.
And Walker was just running with this guy, and he looks livid as well. He's like...
This whole episode, there's some really weird, like, digital zooms going on. Oh, yeah. Where they clearly, like, cropped the existing footage to get a bit closer. Yeah. And this is one of them where they do, like, a close-up of Walker's face, and it's, like, really grainy and awkward.
Yeah.
So Trent, he's super pissed. He goes full-on Cobra Kai, and we see him, like, shirtless, just trashing a punching bag in his studio. Meanwhile, back at the school, we see a shrine for Mr. Lopez, and we get a bit of a reprise of the beautiful. And all of the students are crossing themselves, and they're laying flowers at his photo. And we see the last girl, who's the nerdy girl who is upset about the gangs in the school, and she's holding her mathematics book, and she seems very deeply troubled by this. But in class, boom, Mr. Walker comes in. This is our second time seeing Walker as a substitute teacher.
Like, technically, is he a substitute teacher? I mean, he's taking over economics class? What?
Right. Like, when he substitute taught high school history, like, that's very much teaching to a book. You know, like, have the kids read the book. They need to understand what happened and go with that. But in, like, math, there are, like, some serious concepts going on. And I don't think we've ever seen Walker's math skills put to the test.
Wait. So, for the record here, though, you're saying that history teachers don't really even know what to do. They just follow the book.
No, I'm saying that I could believe that he could be a substitute history teacher. The assignments would be a bit easier for him to substitute.
Do you think that math teachers should get paid more than history teachers? Is that what you're saying? Because they actually need to know what they're teaching? He's
trying to pin you down, Evan. Don't let him.
I'm fine with him pinning me down on that. Yes, I do.
Evan, honestly, dude, I think any teacher, regardless of their knowledge, can...
Oh, yeah. The teaching concepts, at least at the high school level, I think the difficulty goes, I would say, from English, math, science, then history.
English being the hardest?
Yes, because so much of it is subjective.
Do you think that we could get an English teacher to maybe grade some of these Walker fan fictions that are up there? I think that would be worth doing, right?
You might think that, but I'm not sure the English teacher who's a friend of the podcast would
if there
think
are
that
any
it's worth
English
doing.
teachers out there who want to print out a Walker fanfic and write it up with a red pen, we would definitely love to check this out.
Oh, man. So, yeah, Walker starts and he's like, I'm Mr. Walker. And he basically immediately guilt trips them. He's like, so Mr. Lopez is dead. He was a friend of mine, too. You guys really liked him. Somebody here witnessed the murder. Who was it? And then there's this really awkward moment for like a minute and a half where all the kids are looking around like, well, I didn't. And Walker immediately, from all the students' reactions, knows that Malcolm witnessed it. And so now Walker's mission is to sort of tease that out of Malcolm at this point.
He stares him down pretty good.
Yeah, totally. For Walker to assume that the person who witnessed the murder was in that class is kind of ridiculous, too, because that school has way more students than just one math class. So then Walker's like, so what do you guys think the problem with your school is? And one girl pipes up and she says, it's the gangs. We got to do something about the gangs. And then the white savior in the classroom pipes up and she says, it's not the gangs at all. It's on us. We're letting the school be bad. We need to do something about it. And Walker, he's all like, well, maybe you're both right. Chantel, I think you're right about the gangs. And, wait for the groan, Faith, I think you're right about the culture in the school.
Wait a minute. What's the name of the episode again?
Test of Faith. So just like Jacob's ladder.
Yeah. We have the mid-episode reveal.
Yeah.
Of the namesake character.
So yeah, this girl Faith, she ends up being sort of the cultural leader of the school in many ways. Walker gets them hooked up with Trent. And Trent's teaching them karate at Thunder Karate Studios. And,
montage.
You know, yeah, in the montage over that, we see Faith. She's starting the local school watchdog group where they basically just turn all the kids into snitches.
Yeah.
Then we see some kids spray painting the side of a school building, and like a side door opens up and she looks out. And then these two like giant security guards come out and throw the two kids into police cars.
Yeah, and they have their own uniforms, like tan uniforms with hats, and you're like,
and a green armband.
Maybe my high school had one security guard. I mean, I was lucky, I guess, that we only needed one security guard, but man, they had like 4 or 5 that were just a task force. So
yeah, well, they got all the kids helping them out too. The Lemon Ave school monitors.
That's what they were named.
Yep. You know, she's all like, we'll be the eyes, but we don't want to be the hand or something like that. So basically just turn people in.
Yeah, just rat on people.
She's like, here's the deal. You're not going to go break it up, but you have to report it.
And so she's really turning that school around. And word gets down to the Diablos. And the Diablos are hanging out in their sweet set, which has got awesome graffiti all over the walls. They're hanging out with their 40s of Budweiser. And this one guy, you know, this is pre-smartphone, so he brings in the local newspaper. Front cover, man. You gotta have faith. And this school is shutting down the crime right there, and it's making the Diablos look bad. And so Loco's all like, we gotta do something about this girl. And he looks over at Carlos, the kid who's a classmate of Faith, and he calls Carlos over, and he's like, you gotta do something for me. This girl, I want you to bust the cap in her.
Oh my God.
And we're all like, what? And this like 30-year-old guy behind this kid pulls out a gun and hands it to the kid. And the kid just sort of lopes off.
And this kid, they're so young, right? I
He's 13, I think you say.
Well, in actuality, yeah, like middle school is like age 10 to 13 or something. So yeah, they're really young kids.
And you know, this stuff does happen. I know, and it's terrible. It's just, oh man.
Yeah, this episode has a lot of very uncomfortable moments.
I was really enjoying that helicopter flight.
Yeah, this immediately makes you forget about that though, huh? So, he tells Carlos to go bust a cap in his classmate, and Carlos obliges. Carlos ends up in the school, and he's running towards Faith, who is having kids sign a petition for metal detectors at the school, which It doesn't make you feel great. But
No.
What makes you feel even worse is that this kid pulls a gun on her, and he's about to shoot, and we see in the background that this other student who we know bought a gun, Malcolm, he sees his classmate pull out a gun, and Malcolm looks like he's going to pull his gun out, but a shot rings out, and boom, we get our third child shot in this episode. Faith goes down.
Yep, they show her get shot, and you're like, wow, this is terrible. Definitely glad Walker was able to prevent these 3 kids from getting shot.
Yeah, he's presumably teaching, right? So
Yeah.
what's all that about? He needs to be there. Come on. So yeah, we see her lying on the ground, and there's obviously a hard cut for a commercial break. I will say this next scene is one of the most over-the-top scenes I've seen in an episode of Walker.
Just back at the hospital, purple hospital room.
Yep. So they're at the hospital, and before we even see anything, we see the outside of the hospital, and we hear Faith going, I can't feel my legs. I can't. What's going on? And this doctor, who's the most dramatic, over-the-top actor in the world, is like, the bullet hit your spinal column and splintered the L5 vertebra.
Oh, no.
And it's too early to tell how bad the damage is. But it's like, in what world is it okay for a doctor to tell that to an 11-year-old?
Yeah.
Maybe when you have one scene and one line and you're a doctor, you need to prove
Oh, he's got another scene, another line. Anyways, I looked this guy up because he is like so good. And this guy, he's in 3 other episodes of Walker, Texas Ranger, 2 of which he plays another doctor. So I'm really looking forward to this. And he actually, before this episode, played a character in Logan's War, which was a made-for-TV movie with Chuck Norris. And in that, he plays the doctor. I love this guy.
Wow, man. I guess maybe he's like, you don't even need to write a script. I've got all the verbiage in my brain. I can just spurt it out.
Right, he's like, I just memorized Grey's Anatomy. I'm in this.
Would have been ER at this point, I think.
Right. And then we cut over to like her parents, who are sort of like distantly to the side. It's a little odd. And the mother's like, God never gives us more than we can't handle. And the girl's like, you're telling me I just have to handle this?
Yeah.
Come on, Mom.
Maybe a little sympathy, before you bring in the spiritualism.
It's okay. We get to see a montage of the Diablos hanging out in their little pad. And they've got their sweet music going on. And interspersed with that, we see
You're
clips.
in my mundo, mondo, in my bad, bad world. You're in my mundo, mondo, in my bad, bad world.
Yep, some really bad, culturally insensitive hip hop going on, and interspersed with that is random clips of Faith reading the Bible out loud to herself.
As you do, you do.
And we see the doctor come around again, and he's all like, "Physical therapy is very painful and difficult." Like, you're the
Thanks,
worst
Doc.
doctor ever, man.
Yeah.
And she's like, actually, I've been reading the Bible, and I'm not going to do physical therapy. I'm just going to be okay. And he's like, well, I really insisted. She's like, nope, I'm good.
Yeah, and he was trying to be like, hey, look, it's good. He even was kind of like, it's good to have a positive attitude, but you've got to be realistic about your chances too. And she's just like, nope, God's going to save me, and I'm going to be able to walk again. And you're like, well, this is a Walker episode. So, I mean, we literally have seen a girl be resurrected by a blinding light in the episode The Neighborhood.
Absolutely.
This is totally in the realm of possibility for a Walker, Texas Ranger episode.
I mean, we can only assume that she was not only reading the Bible, but watching previous episodes of Walker.
Indeed.
Meanwhile, back in the classroom, kids are all wondering what's going on, and they're like, how's Faith? Is she okay? Is she going to be all right? And Walker's like,
I think this has to be another segment. Walker breaks the absolute worst news to children. This has got to be a common thing because, I mean, look, you've got Walker telling kids that they have AIDS.
We haven't seen that yet, though.
We haven't seen it yet. But what happens here?
yeah, he's all like, well, the bullet hit her spinal column. And they're like, does that mean she's paralyzed? And he's like, well, don't know. Too early to tell. So about math.
Yeah, right. You know, my foot plus your face equals Roundhouse, but that's about all I can do.
That's serious addition right there. After school, Malcolm comes up to Walker, and he's really slowly walking. And you can tell that in class when he heard that she was possibly paralyzed, that Malcolm was pretty shook up by this whole thing. And so Malcolm walks up to Walker, and like in slow-mo, dramatic, weird digital zoom fashion, he pulls out a gun.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they want us to believe that he's going to shoot Walker. Like, there's been nothing in this episode that would lead us to believe that he's going to shoot Walker. But it's almost like they put it in there for people who just tuned in.
Right. It was a commercial cliffhanger, like, oh, this kid's going to shoot Walker. But in the music was like sinister leading up to it. But you're like, but even like, I noticed, I was like, I don't believe this. I was like, I know he's not going to shoot him because that's not in his character.
Right. So basically, he hands the gun over to Walker. And Walker's like, you saw Loco shoot your teacher, right? And he's like, yeah, I did. And I feel so bad about Faith because I actually bought this gun to protect myself, but instead I went to grab the gun when I saw Faith about to get shot, and I panicked and dropped my backpack, which had the gun in it, and the gun went off and hit Faith. I'm the one who shot her, not Carlos.
Mind blown.
Yeah, that's a real twist. So Walker's not upset with him at all. He's like, it seems like you learned your lesson that
yeah, let's make this into like a gun safety episode.
Yeah, it's like carrying a gun doesn't help solve a problem, or isn't the solution. It just makes problems, or something like that.
Right. He pretty much said that guns are the problem, and maybe we can get into this now because literally what he's saying right now is that a good guy with a gun doesn't dispel a bad guy with a gun.
It doesn't sound.
And it doesn't
like
seem in
Walker
line with what the show's morals would be trying to tell us.
Right.
To me, you know what I mean? At the same time, it kind of goes contrary to that. And we have just seen him just shoot up a bunch of people already. Walker just going crazy with guns already. So,
well, we saw that very early on in like The Patriot and a few other things where they're preaching non-violence and then immediately switch over to violence.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's just like maybe this isn't the right venue for this, but interesting. Okay.
Sure. So now that they have a witness who's a 13-year-old child, so sure. But they have a witness to the murder of the teacher. It's time for a bust on the Diablo's drug den. And they're all in there like...
And Walker doesn't use any guns in this scene, right?
Oh, he totally does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, they basically just, like, kick down the door and come in guns blazing and just mow down a bunch of people.
Right.
And they, like, mow down everybody except for Loco. And Loco, like, runs out a back door, leaving Trevette there with, like, the whole task force. And Trevette's just like, get him! But then everyone's dead at that point.
Yeah, just Loco went running and he's jumping over, like, chain link fences. And you're like... I don't think it's physically possible for Walker to catch up to him, but Walker's here.
Yep. Body slams him out of nowhere. Into a pile of trash, of course.
Yeah, and they get into hand-to-hand combat, and Walker gets some pretty tasty kicks in him, and Loco is pretty much a punching bag at this point.
He dealt a couple. I was surprised to see he landed one or two.
Yeah, Walker took a few hits in between devastating blows, and like a normal person would have been out after one or two of those, but I'm like, thank God this fight is lasting a long time. We need this one to last a little bit.
No roundhouse kicks, but a couple of sort of jump kicks. I did wonder if Loco encountered any stray beers in that pile of trash.
Yeah, I mean, CD, he's known to take beers he doesn't like and just leave them in garbage pails all across the city.
So, Walker jump kicks Loco down to the ground, and he's now cuffing Loco. This is like a Law and Order episode. Twist upon twists here. Carlos, the young child from school, pulls a gun on Walker. And there's a bit of a standoff.
And this standoff is reminiscent of The Covenant, is it not?
I was going to say, it might seem a bit familiar to people who've watched other episodes of Walker. I'm pretty sure There's a lot of recycled dialogue here.
Yeah, we've got Loco on the ground in cuffs that Walker's about to take away, and Carlos has Walker at gunpoint from a distance, and Walker's like, you're going to want to think about this decision because it's going to change the rest of your life, which is just what Walker said in The Covenant to two kids with sawed-off shotguns who had him at gunpoint while he was busting up the leader of the Vatos Locos.
Pretty much, yeah.
So the kid shoots Walker, and he's dead.
Yeah. We don't need to talk about that, but it does happen.
Suffice it to say, the kid surrenders. And
Yeah.
And does Walker...
I think he does, yeah. Matter of fact.
he sure does. And I think multiple children, really, because next he goes to visit Faith in the hospital. And Faith tells him her plan, which is basically, hey, I'm just going to kick back and relax here, and at some point, God's just going to flip a switch, and my legs are going to work again. And Walker's all like, I don't know if it's going to work like that. Let me tell you a little story.
He doesn't even say it's good to have faith because her name's Faith, so she probably knows this already.
Yeah, opportunity missed.
He's like, look, let me tell you a little story. There's this guy that prayed to win the lottery for 10 years. And Faith is like, let me guess. He didn't win the lottery, so he stopped believing in God. And Walker's like, yeah, but there's more.
Well, no, Walker prefaces the whole story with, I have a friend who gave up believing in God. And she's like, that's incredibly sad.
Yeah.
And Walker's like, yes, it is.
Sure is.
And he goes, yeah, funny thing is, he never bought a lottery ticket.
Lamest story ever.
Yeah.
So she's like, so the lesson here is,
If you're going to pray to God to win the lottery, you have to buy the damn ticket. That's what I took away from it.
no.
And then
Yeah.
if you do pray to God to win the lottery and you buy the ticket, you're going to win the lottery.
God only helps those who helps themselves, is what he should have been saying, right?
And she did say that, right?
But
She
what
was
he
like,
said,
"Oh,
was,
Yeah.
God only helps those who play the lottery. So make sure to pick up your numbers tonight on the way home.
Well, I found this pretty funny because she's like, oh, I get it. So God helps those who help themselves, which is a direct quote from Deacon Bodie, a religious cult leader that we met a couple episodes ago, who uses that turn of phrase to justify him deserting his concubines at the compound.
Right.
The baby.
Wow. Well,
Boom. Putting it all together here.
Wow. I don't know what that
Spinning the
means.
web of Walker.
Not sure exactly what that means, but
It's deep.
yeah.
It's all context. If it's coming from a creepy pedophile statutory rapist at a commune, it's probably bad. But if it's coming from a paralyzed 12-year-old girl, it's probably good. What I will say is that the final scene of this episode is not good. It is very weird.
It's very bad.
It's like a gymnasium with like one of like those railing things where people rehab to walk, but there's nothing else around them except for Walker, which I guess I could understand him being there. The overly dramatic doctor, once again, understand him being there. Her parents, sure. Faith, yep. And then her classmates.
Her classmates are there to help her through learning to walk again. That's probably like a private moment, you know what
Including the one who shot her, but
Yeah, did
Right.
water under the bridge.
Didn't she find out that he was the one that shot her by that point?
And he
Yep.
came to visit her in the hospital, and she was kind of like cool with it.
Yeah, she's fine with it. It's all good. And she's like laughing, crying, and screaming during this whole process and being like, I can do it! I'm doing it! Ah! And everyone is either like cheering or looking on in horror or joy. It's extremely confusing. And to make things even more confusing, at the end, Walker like leans over, kisses her cheek, and there's a freeze frame. That's it.
So the life of a child, and you will live forever in that child's life. So the life of a child, and the world will be shine so bright. Save the life of a child. Live forever.
Safe to say that we'll have a full download of that available on our Patreon page?
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Well, that about sums up this weird one. We'd love to give a shout out to our friend and collaborator, Adam Lauritsen. He's the one who's been drawing the amazing Walkerstrations on our social media. Check out the one for this week. And be sure to check out his other art on Instagram at @Imagination Run Amok. When we come back, it'll be time for us to each rate Test of Faith on a scale of 0 to 10 boots to the face, resulting in our patented Roundhouse Roulette episode ranking, complete results of which are available on our website, roundhouseroulette.com. Don't go away.
Well, fancy meeting you here, little partner. I see you eyeing my Ram pickup. You certainly have an eye for the finery. We here at Roundhouse Roulette are powered by a love of pure, unadulterated Walker Texas Ranger, of a kind found only in a white buffalo's tears. Paired with a camaraderie of listeners like you, it's been a blast following Walker's adventures thus far. As you likely surmised, Dodge is not yet one of our sponsors, so if you'd like to lend us a hand in growing the podcast to new ridiculous heights, please share us with a friend or leave us a kind review on Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to further help us take it to the streets, we recently added some fresh new merchandise at roundhouseroulette.com. Or for as little as a few bucks a month, you can help us bring the podcast to you every week on our Patreon page. Membership levels range from Criminal Mastermind to Texas Ranger and promise further Walker content, perks, and antics. All these things help us to cover editing, artwork, blogs, and web hosting, and further our goal of delivering the light of Walker to the world. Most importantly, though, thank you for listening and making this crazy journey of ours worthwhile. But enough of my yakking. I've got a hankering for some of that savory bar and grill chili. Let's get back to the show.
What did you guys think about this one? I think, Bob, you're going first, buddy.
Am I first this time? Okay.
Good luck.
This one started off really good. And then quickly just was brought down to a simmer and then just kind of fizzled out. That whole intro Walker scene was just like, and the terrible music. I was like, yeah, this is going to be great. But then, yeah, I don't know. The whole gang thing just doesn't sit well with me. I don't know if it's just not done well or they're just way out of their wheelhouse. And killing kids.
they like a good gang episode. So.
I guess. Yeah, they seem to. But yeah, this one wasn't really doing it for me. I had to put a 3 for this one. I mean, I love the song, but thank you. Thank you. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I really wanted to be able to overlook like the first few minutes of the episode where kids get into a near knife fight in the school cafeteria and just revel in the sheer monstrosity of the opening sequence with Walker. And, you know, when I was watching that, I was thinking, yes, this is what we watch Walker for. And, like, if we were trying to express the magnitude of Walker's character to someone who is uninitiated, I would highly recommend, like, those 3 minutes of footage. Outside of that, pretty awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, like as soon as like the kids got gunned down by the dude, I was like, all right, I'm kind of checked out of this one. Not only that, like we've already seen a better version of Walker being a substitute teacher. We've already seen better versions of gang episodes where like I like the one where like we met the Diamantes. We're kind of like, you know, we're a gang that just likes to hang out, you know, and this other gang wants to kill us, but you know, we just got to hang out, you know, and like that was like a gang war. But like this is the other thing though. Walker only helped de-escalate a conflict between 2 gangs, but there are 5 gangs trying to lay claim to that school. So what's with the other 3?
Future episodes.
I sure hope not. I'm giving this one a 3.
All right. I really wanted to go low on this one because it deals with a really serious topic that the show is just ill-equipped to deal with in a thoughtful way. And one of the magical things about Walker Texas Ranger is the fact that he believes in the message he's trying to portray, which is gang violence is bad, which no one's going to argue that. It's just you're sending contrary messages in this episode. It seems like it kind of did more harm than good as far as that. And you reinforce a liberal message that a good guy with a gun doesn't cancel out a bad guy with a gun.
Very off-brand.
Yeah, very off-brand, Chuck Norris.
Extremely.
And, you pretty much said that God only helps people who gamble. Definitely something I live by. And then the main lesson is by helping one child at a time makes a difference. So that was another lesson we saw in Soldiers of Hate. So as Evan mentioned, all these themes have been done better in other episodes.
I also forgot to mention that even though we didn't rank the neighborhood particularly high, at least the person trying to make change from within a community was someone who grew up in that community and looked like the people she was trying to reform. Whereas in this case, it was the one white girl with two parents who loved her very much and had Walker loving her very much and a doctor looking over her the whole time trying to save the school, whereas like a much more compelling story would be the Carlos angle, or actually the other kid, Malcolm, who is a far more compelling character, but we didn't get much of that either.
Right.
So instead we get Faith, who's like literally the white savior, and it's just a bit
and she's
much.
thrown in at the back end of the episode. There's no substance there either, where the other characters were in the community and were more sympathetic and were just, not well used. The one complication with rating this episode for me, as you mentioned, was that amazing opening scene that has nothing to do with what we're talking about right now.
We didn't talk about the music in that scene when the car chase. The music in that is freaking ridiculous. And there's like a guy scatting along to it too. It's insane.
So good.
He's like,
everything.
Boo, boo, yeah.
That stretch of that scene was everything that's great about Walker, Texas Ranger. But I think I'm going to have to mirror you guys here. I actually was going to go 4, but even the neighborhood that had less action was better than this episode.
Well, that gives this episode a Roundhouse rating of 3 boots to the face.
Even 3.
This one's complicated. This is an Avril Lavigne style.
It's a stinker. Just call a spade a spade.
Oh, man. Well, I think we can all agree that karate solves all problems and that hip-hop should be left to the professionals. But please let us know what you think on social media or by emailing us at roundhouseroulette@gmail.com. When we come back, we'll spin the Roundhouse Roulette wheel and select next week's episode. We're back. You ready to spin that thing, Bob?
You know it.
Yeah. This can't not be awesome, right?
Season 4, episode 16, The Juggernaut.
Tracked to Alex's support group, a battered housewife puts them all in danger when she informs her abusive husband she wants a divorce. That definitely wasn't what I was expecting from that title. That's terrible.
Let's see how they weave in that title name into the episode.
Do you think we're going to have like an X-Men crossover in this one or what?
Oh, you think he's going to bust through the door and say, no one stops the Juggernaut?
Yeah, I think the battered wife is like Jean Grey and Cyclops is like the husband.
I don't know. I was really hoping in this last episode that we narrowly missed like a deep dive into the world of domestic abuse, but it looks like we're about to be vaulted back into that one.
Yeah, right after some really terrible gang violence. So really something to look forward to next week. Holy moly.
Well, we hope you'll join us next week, despite the subject matter, when we share our reactions to the Season 4, Episode 16, The Juggernaut. In the meantime, share your opinions with us on Facebook and on Instagram at Roundhouse Roulette and on Twitter at @RoundhousePod. And please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your fine podcasts. Thanks for listening, and until next week, may the eyes of the Ranger be upon you.
When you're in Texas, look behind you. Oh, 'cause that's where the Ranger's gonna be.